Hey everyone, Adam here. Before today's show, I ask you all please to go over to my Instagram and give me a follow at Behind the Life Podcast. I'm also now on Twitter at Behind the Life 3. You can now listen to all episodes on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, TuneIn, and just say, Alexa, play Behind the Life Podcast. Enjoy today's episode. On today's show, I'm going behind the life of Holly Matthews. Holly is a Geordie, mother, actress, vlogger, speaker, and quote, no bullshit development coach. She started her career in Byker Grove before signing to Sony UK, releasing a single before going back into acting and starring in programmes such as Waterloo Road, Doctors, Casualty, and The Bill. As a self-development coach, she launched her online self-development course, the Bossing It Academy. In 2017, her life changed forever through the tragic death of her husband Ross through brain cancer. After his death, Holly launched the Happy Me Project online, a straight-talking brand of self-development. She's also the co-author of 2 best-selling Amazon books and offers one-to-one coaching. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Behind the Life of Holly Matthews. Evening, Holly. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very good, Holly. Thank you for so much for coming on to Behind the Life. What a life you've lived so far. You've had loads of ups, loads of downs,
thank you.
And loads of things.
It's when it's read out to you like that, it always seems like, oh yeah, there's been a lot of stuff. There has been a lot of things that have happened and a lot of stuff that has gone on. So it always feels like, yeah, when I actually read it, and people often say to me, like, I must be about 100 because a lot of stuff's happened in my life.
Is there ever any times when you get a chance to just sort of sit back and reflect, because your life seems to be going a million miles an hour?
I mean, yes, I do, and I think actually since I've always been a very driven person. So I've always been a person who I have a very active sort of mind. So I like to be busy. I do like doing things. However, I'm not a person that believes in being a busy fool. And I really dislike the perpetuation of the hustle lifestyle, because it's not sustainable. Like, in reality, it's not. You have to have times of hustle and times of downtime and calm, and I do have those moments. And I think when I was younger, it was literally a million miles an hour always. I was doing just 100 jobs at once, whereas as I've got older, I'm becoming a parent as well.
Yeah,
I try more to focus on the thing I'm doing at that moment. I'll focus on that and try to be that in that moment. And I do also actively factor in self-care, meaning that I actually switch off and I try to actively just be in my bubble a little bit. And sometimes, yes, sometimes I do sort of look over the things that have happened. And certainly since my husband's death, I actually, I feel like I kind of reflected on things a lot more than I had before. And certainly even, changed a few things that I was doing before, because, and I'm sure that your listeners will understand as well, that have gone through their own difficulties in life, whether it's loss or, death or illness or job loss or relationship breaks, whatever else it is, that when big things happen in your life, you really do take stock and you look at what's working and what's not, and what's not gonna come with you in the next stage of your life. And I think I definitely have those moments where I just take stock, and I try to make that quite a regular thing now.
No, that's really good. And meditation and well-being as well. It's a huge thing. Do you do things like meditation?
I do, yeah. So pretty much every day, I will do a 10-minute meditation. If I don't get the chance, sometimes I'll do longer, and sometimes it will be, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, meditation is really a go-to thing for me. And if I'm feeling that I am getting in that busy mindset and I'm actually not being very productive, I might, I think when we get taught, online particularly, you see everybody, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And they have this kind of, this idea that that's how you become successful. When actually sometimes you need to slow down to speed up. And in my times when I feel like I'm chasing my tail, that's the time I need to meditate, because when I do that and I zone in a little bit, I can then work out what's the most important thing for me to do next. So that's something that I take really seriously. And if I can't meditate, I take 10 breaths and that's it. So that's my advice to you guys. I think sometimes the idea of meditation, which I'm a believer in urban meditation, which is a phrase I coined a while ago, because we live in busy, a lot of us live in busy city lives, and there's never a peaceful moment. If you're a parent, there's never a time that meditation is not going to be difficult in your home. It's never going to be calm, is it? And so I believe in urban meditation, where you learn to almost meditate on the noise. I mean, I meditate and my kids will crawl in my room. They will be making noise. They'll be kicking the radiator. And I try to use it as a practice of patience and like actually thinking to myself, yeah, that's okay. I'm comfortable with the noise of my child kicking the radiator. And I just use it as a bit of a practice of my own patience. So I never think meditation needs to be this big deal. And if you can't meditate or you don't feel like you can, then just taking 10 full breaths a day and just checking in with yourself is actually just as good.
I agree. I think it's even having 5 minutes to yourself, come off your phone, turn the TV off, even going to bed an hour early and reading a book. That way of just unwinding. As you said, people do live a million miles an hour, and it's just like, I just need fucking 5 minutes to myself.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And there's different ways. I mean, there's different ways of meditating. And I think for some people, things like reading a book is meditative. Some people going for a run, some people playing golf. I like to sketch. I actually like drawing. And that for me feels very meditating, because it helps me to switch off when I'm focused on copying. I just copy things on Pinterest and stuff. And it's not anything but what it is. I just enjoy sitting sketching. And actually that's something else that I think is important, is that often we, especially if you're a very entrepreneurial brained person or a driven, ambitious person, you feel like everything you do has to have an end goal. And for a long, long time, that was me. And actually, I've talked about this recently because it's quite funny, and it always makes me think of it. But when my husband was still alive, I went through a time, there was about 6-month period when I was in a real low place. My sister's partner had just been diagnosed with leukemia, and it was actually seeing her go through the same thing I had been walking through, which was harder than my own difficulties with my husband having brain cancer. Watching somebody else do it when I knew she wouldn't deal with it in the same way as me was really difficult. And I went through a really low time. And in that time, I started trying to find ways to do things that didn't have an end goal, that weren't about work, weren't about me developing my career or acting or anything else. And I started to make these wool pom-poms, right? Okay. Because it was such a mundane task. I don't know if you've ever made a pom-pom, but you just literally wind in wool round and round this like circle bit of card, and then you cut them. So it was a mundane task, and it was to sort of occupy my brain. Now, when you're an entrepreneurial brained human, what happens is after a while, when you get quite good at them, right? So I was quite good at making these pom-poms. I was making big ones, small ones, colorful ones. I made a big cushion out of one. My brain then just snaps into, I could sell these pom-poms. And then I start thinking I could teach other people how to make pom-poms. I could be the pom-pom guru. In my head, it starts becoming a brand. And my husband came in one day, and I obviously explained that basically I was going to be god of the pom-poms and teach everybody and basically be a pom-pom millionaire, which is not a thing. And he just looked at me, put his hands on my shoulders and just went, Holly, just let the pom-poms be pom-poms. And that's it. So now, and it made me laugh so much because it was that moment of him going, just settle it down. Not everything has to have an end goal. And it really made me think about it. And now when I can feel myself trying to make everything a sale or a something that's going to develop my career or make me a millionaire, I have that phrase in my head, just let the pom-poms be the pom-poms. Sometimes things can be just something to calm us down and relax us, and it doesn't have to have a thing at the end of it.
So, talking about business, and you do loads at the moment, which we'll come on to later. How do you deal with failure and not reaching your targets?
How do I deal with it?
Yeah.
So my first big failure, and I have spoken about this before, but was, so when I left Byker Grove, I'd done that for 7 years. And then my character in the show was a singer. I walked into a record contract. It all felt very easy breezy, all these tales of, it's really difficult, the entertainment industry. Well, at, 18, 19, when I signed to Sony, it didn't feel all that difficult. I'd done 7 years in a TV show. What do these people know about, anything? And what happened was, it was actually a changeable time in the music industry, and people were no longer buying singles, and people, things were changing. People were starting to online download, and it was just a different time. And I was on a 1 single deal with if that did well, that we would go on and do the album. And so the single on what would it be? So the Saturday, I knew where it was going to chart on the Radio 1 chart show. On the Sunday, it goes out on Radio 1. Got to 32 in the charts. On Monday morning, I took a call to say, it's been nice working with you, goodbye. So I had gone from, I'd been working with these people for a year. I'd done Top of the Pops and Nickelodeon and Disney. I'd been recording all around the country, and suddenly that was it. About a month later, I was working in a coffee shop next to where I live with a massive tax bill, going, what on earth do I do next? And it was actually the best lesson that I could have ever had, because what it taught me was that I had to then reassess what I wanted. And for me, what I realized in that time was, singing wasn't my thing. It wasn't something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it actually just as a hobby, and it was acting and playing characters was the thing that I loved. And so I went to drama school, and I just reassessed what I wanted to do. But I always say that first big failure, and also a failure in front of other people. And really, in reality, looking back on it now as a grown woman, I realized it wasn't really a failure, but it felt like that because it was public, and it was, your ego takes a knock because suddenly you're not on TV, you're working in a coffee shop, or and people don't see that bit. They don't see that when they think of, successful people. They don't see the highs and lows that have been there along the way. But even now, there's failures all the time. There's things that I've done over the last few years, or, the last 5-6 years, where it hasn't panned out. It hasn't been the most successful thing, but I just don't think that we can grow if we don't fail. How can we? I say it to my daughters all the time. I'm like, you have to fail. Yeah. You can't be good at something the first time you've tried it. You fail first. You fail forward. So you fail, and then you get up and you crack on and you work out what didn't work.
I agree. And as you said before your singing, you were in the Grove, and I'm an 80s kid. And I was a huge fan of the Grove. So what was it like? Was that your first break into acting and working?
Yeah. So it was my first one. So I was 11 when I got in the show. So it would have been 97. And it's weird because I hadn't particularly watched Byker Grove before that. I guess I was still quite young, really. It was actually at the time was seen as, bearing in mind there was no Hollyoaks, there was no sort of older teen stuff. Byker Grove was the first of its type for a lot of stuff. The first gay kiss on kids' TV was on Byker Grove, and it was the tamest thing you've ever seen. I mean, you'd say so much more grown-up stuff, and it was a huge controversy. First teen pregnancy, things like that. It was really quite a controversial show of its time. So I probably hadn't watched it, possibly because I was still quite young. And what happened, there was going to be a TV show in Newcastle there was a TV show called The Quaysiders. Don't think it was particularly successful. It was supposed to be the Northeast EastEnders.
Okay.
And it was mostly set in pubs and bars. And that had been advertised. And so I said to my dad, because I'd wanted to be an actor. So I said, oh, Dad, I really want to audition for that show. How can I get in it? And there was a casting call in the newspaper. And so my dad got in contact and said, look, is there going to be any roles for kids? My daughter's really interested in auditioning. It's such a different world now. That seems like that would never happen now. But he did. So he contacted them and they said, look, it's mostly just adults, but here's the number for the casting people for Byker Grove. So he contacted them and they did what they would normally do. Just send us a letter and, and a CV and whatever, and some pictures, and we'll come back to you. And they used to use normal kids. There was no drama school in Newcastle at the time. It's just normal working class kids. And so I wrote this letter, and this letter has, in my mind over the years, had become a bit of a, I guess, an urban legend, because I started to think, did I even write this letter? Because I was imagining it was in like crayon. And on my 30th birthday, I had done it. We must have had a computer. We must have just had a computer. And my mom had found it on the computer, and she got it put on a canvas for me. And it's just the cutest thing. It says, "My name is Holly and I am an actress," affirming it. And actually looking back, I still say that letter is still how I do business right now. It's absolute just front and being, in Newcastle, we've got a saying that is shy Ben's getting out, which means if you don't ask, you don't get. If you're shy and you sit quietly, you'll get nothing, so speak up. And I was brought up on that ethos. And so this letter just says, "My name is Holly and I am an actress." And it says, "I have got brown hair and green eyes, and I've coloured the word brown in brown and green in green." And just to help them out a little bit. And then it's hilarious. And it says, I've done plays at school, and I am not shy one bit. And then at the very bottom, it just says, "PPS, please write back soon," because I was like dead keen. And for some reason they did actually write back, and they got me in for auditions. And I did about 6 auditions, I think.
Wow, okay.
for a character of somebody's sister. Didn't get the part. But I was absolutely just chuffed to bits. I'd been on the set. I'd met other actors. I suddenly realized that this was the world that I really wanted to be in. And then about 6 months later, I got a phone call to say they'd written a part in for me.
Right. How did you feel when you got that call then? Were you like,
oh my God. Well, I can still remember. I remember that high. I mean, I think I was talking about this recently. As an actor, the feeling of getting a part is a high. Like, it's an actual high. And I remember that must have been my first taste of that feeling of getting that success. And I remember taking the phone call, and then I ran all the way to pick my sister up from school so I could tell her that I was going to be on Byker Grove, was going to be on a TV show. And I didn't expect, I had no expectation. And actually, the interesting thing is, now as a self-development coach, I talk to people about, self-belief and affirming the things that you want in life. And that if you believe that you will have something enough, and if you can visualize it and you can affirm it to yourself and you can believe it, so like with everything that you are, the universe moves out the way, people move out the way, things happen for you. As a child, you don't have the same worries and stuff that adults have. And so it wasn't a surprise to me that I got the part, because I had no doubt. I had no reason to doubt that I would be on TV. No, I didn't have the stuff that adults have. As a child, you just think, well, of course I'm going to be on TV. Why wouldn't I be? I'm sure everyone around me, my dad was a welder. My mum worked in a bank. I'm sure they were slightly perplexed at that I was going to be on TV. But to me, it was just exciting. I was just thrilled.
So how was your first day on there and your first few weeks? Were you really nervous? What's it like being an actress? Are the directors really good with you, really kind, and say it's okay if you mess up?
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, Byker Grove was a really amazing place. But bear in mind, I started that show when I was just becoming a teenager. I was 11. I was just starting. I would think I was 12 when I started filming, and I was this frizzy-haired, skinny, gappy-teethed, like dorky, spotty teenager. And I was, I did not like everyone can remember their teenage years. It's not a pretty thing. It is not something you feel good. You're awkward. You're hormonal. You just don't know who you are. So I went in that time, and a lot of the girls in the cast were a lot older than me. And they were beautiful and attractive. And I can remember, and this is one of my first moments of going into the makeup department. And I remember going in, and obviously the cast everyone was really close. So I was the new girl, and I remember going in and the makeup artist saying, "Oh, everybody looks amazing." Because we used to have 6 months off and then 6 months filming. So the 6 month they'd all been off, they'd come back to set, and she was like, "Oh my God, your hair, everything, you look so good, you look so well." And I remember her looking at me and going, "Oh, you've got quite bad skin." And that moment of like, oh my God, like I wanted the ground to swallow me up. And that was like, actually, interestingly, not interestingly, probably quite obviously, growing up on television in your awkward years is like the worst for your your body image stuff. And I was really quite bad with body dysmorphia. I really didn't like myself at all when I was on there in terms of the way that I looked. But that was one of my first memories of it. However, when I was on set, it was, for me, it was just such a safe space. I loved being on set. I loved being able to leave school. I went to a normal school, and then I would be tutored on set, and then I would go back to school. And that was rough for every one of the kids in the show. It was rough because, other kids aren't going to be nice about that. It's difficult. So when I would go and be on set, that was my safe space. And even now as an adult, I always say, I talk a lot on camera about really personal stuff and have shared a lot. And I guess that must be really strange for the majority of people. And perhaps some people think it's oversharing and all of that. But for me, being in front of a camera has always been my safe space. It's been my place to get my stuff out, to be creative. And it's never felt like that to me. It's always just felt a comfortable space. And I really put that down to Byker Grove and that being my safe place outside of school and around creative people who understood how my mind worked. And it was a very supportive place. I mean, I still speak to cast members now. I've still got really long-term friends from the show.
Who's your your best friend that you keep in touch with from the show then?
One of my best mates, she was one of my friends in the show, and she played Laura. Okay. And she's a friend of mine called Louise. I still now and then keep in touch with Andrew Hayden Smith, who played, oh my God, I forgot, Ben. He played Ben. In fact, he died in the show, and I was, at the time we were dating in the show. But I keep in touch with a few of them. I did work with, I know it's the top question people will ask me, I did work with Ant and Dec, but they weren't my era. So they came back and did Jeff, the Grove lead.
Jeff Keegan, legend.
Yeah, Jeff Keegan. I forgot that was his surname. Amazing. Yeah, so Jeff Keegan, he was a lovely man, Billy Fane. Yes. So he had died in the show. He had been blown up. Very sad time. So we did the scenes of the funeral, and Ant and Dec came back for that. So they were established by then. So I was probably 13, 14, and I was one of the only cast members that did a scene with them on my own. And I mean, you can imagine, because to me, they were PJ and Duncan. They were like celebrities, and so doing the scene with them. I think it's on YouTube somewhere, and I'm just like, I can remember thinking how grown up I thought I was at the time, and I just looked so young. So I did work with them and have met them obviously at events and stuff over the years, but they weren't really my era. They were the original Grovers.
Yeah, that was more my era was this Spuggy as well, who was in there. And people like your Donna Air and your Jill Halfpennies as well. So, yeah,
of course.
Really
there's been, do you know what, there has been, it really has. There's been a lot of actors and a lot of, it was such a hub. It was like when Byker Grove finished, and I think people of our age possibly don't recognize how long it went on for. Because I think in the end, it was about 21, 22 years it was on for. It was on for a long time, but then you get to it was on at 5 o'clock. So once you get to working age, you're not really thinking about what's on at 5 o'clock. So it was on a long time. And when it finished, so many people within the industry, the entertainment industry is small. So many people had gone through the doors of Byker Grove, and everyone kind of just moved down to Emmerdale. Everyone that I knew just shifted down. That was like the next one down, Leeds. So they were like, we'll just go to Emmerdale now. So it was just such and even now, I will meet people in the industry who will know somebody who was on Byker Grove because it was such a hub.
Yeah, it was absolutely great for the North East as well. I live in Liverpool, and obviously we've got Hollyoaks here. And
of course,
it's such a launch ground. Like people from Hollyoaks, funny enough, like go into your Emmerdales now and into your Corries as well. So after your foray into singing that you mentioned before, you did shows like what I mentioned before, Waterloo Road, Doctors, Casualty, did the Bill. What was the favourite role you've ever done? Okay,
so my favourite role, and this was purely because, well, first of all, I was absolutely gutted that Brookside finished. Right. And that was your Liverpool one. I mean, that was the one. I was heartbroken. I'd perfected my Liverpool accent. I was ready for Brookside. And then it finished. I'm just still hoping they bring it back. I mean, I'll go back into acting if they bring Brookside back. I'll be back for it.
Well, that broke grounds as well. You talked about Byker
It did.
Grove, and you had Grange Hill, that was still
Yeah.
Redmond as well, who wrote Brookside.
Yes.
You never know.
And they did. I mean, Brookside really broke grounds, and they did some really controversial stuff. And I guess from a northerner's point of view, it was Liverpool and Newcastle are quite similar cities in lots of ways, and so I still had a bit of a connection with Brookside. But yeah, so after doing that, my favourite role was actually the Bill. So I played a drug addict, a crackhead called Josie Clark in the Bill. Okay. And when that came up, I'd left drama school. So I left drama school to do Waterloo Road. I was one of those naughty people that, well, actually, I say naughty. Some of the most successful people in the world are college or university dropouts, and that was also me. So I was secretly sneaking off. At drama school, you're supposed to do the full 3 years. It's very prestigious at drama school, and you're supposed to be a product of that school. But I was sneaking off and auditioning for parts and just not going in and stuff. And because I just wanted to be back in the industry. I just loved what I did. And although I liked drama school, I wanted to be back out there. So I got Waterloo Road. So it wasn't long after that I did the Bill. And the Bill was I was such a fan of the Bill. Like growing up, that was one of my favorite shows. And I always used to think, I'd love to be on the Bill. Like I'd love to play something like rough, one of the rough characters on the Bill. So when it came up, I rang my sister and I was like, my younger sister, I was like, guess what audition has come up? And she was like, prostitute on the Bill. And I was like, no, crackhead, even better. And she was like, you've got to get this. So I went there fully looking like a crackhead, like fully drugged up. Like I was method in it on the tube. Like people were moving away. I was twitching. I was like, I was giving it loads. And so when I did the part, again, I do take what I do seriously. And, jokes aside, I do actually take it really seriously. And I knew that when I went into that audition, they'd seen my headshot and they were like, their director said to me, if you hadn't come in like this, I'd already decided from the way you look on your headshot, which is your actor's photograph, that you weren't going to be a crackhead. Like you weren't going to look like that. But because I came in looking so rough, like he was like, no, you can be a crackhead, babe. You're fine. And so when I did the actual filming, I knew that my character she was arrested. I held somebody hostage with a syringe and stuff. And so really good fun scenes as an actor. And the day before, me and my sister, I was like, well, I need to look really rough tomorrow because I'm a crackhead. And she was like, I know what we should do. We should get really drunk. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. It's not a great idea, just putting it out there now. So we drank, and I'm not a drinker. Like I don't drink now, pretty much. Like now and then, I'm not completely teetotal, but I'm not a drinker. So we drank loads. We went through all the drunk stages, the chatting, the crying, the ringing people, the full lot. And I had to get to set the next day, and I had to get off the tube to be sick. I mean, I'm not even sure I've shared this before with anyone, Adam. I had to be sick at Stratford Tube Station. I'm disgusting. And I went to set, and everyone was so impressed. They were like, gosh, she's so real. I mean, that is acting. And I was so rough. And I felt like after, when they said, right, Holly, you're wrapped for the day. We'll see you tomorrow. I was like, when will this stop? Like I was still feeling like a drug addict, but I was just superbly hungover. So it looked great. And that was my favorite part because I was a fan. I was like walking around the set, looking at people and like a fan. Like I probably shouldn't have been allowed on there because I was a sad, nerdy fan.
Was anybody that you saw that would be like, oh my God, I don't know what to say?
Well, I was pretty excited. Do you remember Reg on the Bill?
Oh yeah, you can forget Reg.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a weird story with Reg because I think actually he went through a really difficult time with his mental health not long after because he got finished from the show. Okay. But I did some scenes with him and I was like so excited. And then I ended up running into him years later and talking to him and then he kept texting me and my sister was like, this is the weirdest thing. Like you were getting texts from Reg from the Bill and he's asking you to like go out and stuff, like not like on a date as such. Well, I don't know, it might have been, but it was like a weird surreal moment where like younger me would have been like absolutely like, what on earth? Like this is a surreal thing. Like Reg from the Bill is text. I mean, I know that's not his real name, obviously, but yeah, I was like just starstruck. It was Reg. It was like Jeff from Byker Grove, meeting such a a character from that particular show. So yeah, I was very excited.
So, you talk about, auditions for all the young actors and actresses out there who go to auditions and you'll get knocked back, you'll take a lot of failures before, you actually land a part. What advice would you give to them to just keep going?
Yeah, I mean, my advice to younger actors, first of all, is the world of acting is very different now to when I was auditioning. So when I was auditioning when I was younger, we didn't have YouTube and we didn't have all of this access to social media where you can create your own brand. We are really lucky to have that now, and younger actors are. Although people might think, oh, there's so many people doing that kind of thing, there's not many people doing it well. And my biggest thing would be that get yourself something that you can do that can make you money outside of acting, whatever that skill is, whatever that is, and have it be something flexible, because there is nothing more depressing than being a skint actor. And I really realized that. And that's how I got into the world of being an entrepreneur and being able to make money outside of acting. And that was purely because if you're an actor and you get a proper job, which I haven't had, but even if you're working in a pub or a coffee shop, you are going to have to phone in sick. You're going to have to pretend to be ill and let people down. And it's not a very nice feeling to do that. Yeah. So work out how you can make money, because actually being able to make money will give you the freedom to be the creative person that you want to be. And actually that's really important. In terms of the failure, you've just got to toughen up with it. And you've got to realize that you've got to not take yourself so seriously. As an actor, you are a product. And that doesn't sound very nice, but you have to not take your exterior, your outside exterior too seriously. You have to understand that there is a certain way that you will look that will, for whatever reason, make you look like a certain type of character. So when I was at drama school, I remember doing an exercise where we had to walk across the room, right? And you're in there's 90, let's say there's 90 people in the room, all other actors. And they had to shout out what kind of parts they thought you would play, or the types of talk about building, like you got to have some like strength of character, because it ain't nice. Yeah. So I gets up and I get chav, prostitute, stripper, boyish, manly. I was like, I didn't know I was like boyish, like aggressive, or like what, like stuff you just don't, because, and if I had let that in and made me think, oh my God, that's who I am, that's how I'm seen, and taken that personally, then that would have hurt. But what I actually thought was, okay, cool, these are the parts that I'll get to play. I appreciate that I knew I was never going to play in reality, in the real world. Okay, if you want to go and do some student theatre production, yes, I might play a big butch manly woman, right? In reality, I'm never going to get cast as that, because I'm 5'1", I'm 7.5 stone, I'm like a tiny human. That's never going to happen. It takes some serious work to change that round, and that's okay. And I think it's when people take themselves too seriously that they can be affected by it, and when they take it to heart, when actually, you know what, there is some fundamental, the ways we look and stuff is often why you do or don't get a part. It's rarely actually, and I mean, without slagging off Hollyoaks actors, there's some terrible actors on that show. There's also some great actors, and I've got friends who've been on Hollyoaks or who are on Hollyoaks. But there's also some absolutely atrocious actors who look gorgeous, right? It's not always about whether you can act or not. And we know that. And actually, do you know what? I'm okay with that as well. Yes, I can get annoyed about it from an acting performance point of view, but what's the point? Because these days, it's largely about what following people have online. You can build yourself a good following and be good at what you do. You've cracked it. And then make your own stuff. Like these days, you don't have the limitations that maybe I had when I was first starting out. When I first started out, you had to get an agent. That was the big deal in the first place. Get an agent, and then the agent will unlock the doors for you. These days, do you need an agent? Yeah, maybe later on, but not necessarily.
Yeah, well, it's true. Like you see all these, reality shows, Strictly Come Dancing and stuff, and you get, YouTubers on there. And it's like,
yeah, of course, yeah.
You've got a massive following. Suddenly, you propelled into TV.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think that's exciting. I know, there's the other side of it, and it can be frustrating for people. And yes, we do get bored of seeing the same faces on TV, and there are certain things, but you know what? We're going to have to just get over that. And if you want to be successful, you just have to keep getting back up, dusting yourself down and cracking on with it. And that's the reality of it, because if you let yourself get brought down by it, there'll be somebody else who won't. And that is really how I got into self-development. So for years, you know, as I said at the beginning, I really had a lot of issues with the way that I looked. I thought I was the ugliest thing. I didn't want to go outside. I could have told you all of the plastic surgery I needed. Thankfully, I didn't get it, but I might have. I really didn't like myself. And so what I did when I was, you know, a teenager, and people didn't talk about self-development and mental health, and we didn't have access to the internet and stuff. We had Carter 98 or something. Don't know if you remember that. Yeah, Carter. We thought it was amazing. Putting in a CD was very exciting. And we didn't know what this stuff was, and so I concocted my own version of self-development. And actually now I know the stuff I was doing was things like affirmations, or I was meditating. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew I didn't want to feel shit anymore. And so I used to try to do things, try to talk about myself better. And a lot of the stuff I actually still teach people now. But the work that I was doing on myself, and over the years, I was always interested in hypnosis or NLP or stuff to do with your brain. And I actually think people often think it's a weird jump for me, but I actually think it's very intertwined with acting, because as an actor, and certainly a TV and film actor, my job as an actor is to walk around in somebody else's shoes, to understand another person's thought process and brain. I don't think that's that vastly different to what I do as a coach. I have to work with clients and understand, what they're doing, how their minds are working, and ways that I can help them to unlock things for themselves. I actually think it's very similar, but because I was always doing that and working on my mind, I think that protected me from those times when I wasn't getting parts, because obviously there was hundreds of parts I didn't get. Just because I've had success doesn't mean that wasn't loads that I missed out on.
Was there ever like a part you missed out on that, would have been huge,
one.
Something that really sticks in your mind? What was it?
One. So there was one, it was not long after I finished singing, and the film was called, I think it was like The Haunting. It was with Donald Sutherland. Wow. And the part, basically, often with, I always looked really young for my age. I mean, I've aged, I've gone like a prune now. I've aged like a raisin. It's overnight. But I've always looked a lot younger, I think because of my frame and stuff, because I'm petite. And I always just looked a lot younger. So even, when I was in Waterloo Road, I was in my 20s playing a schoolgirl. Like I've always played younger. And so when I went for this part, it was actually, I was 19 and it was a part of a 14-year-old. And often the reason they prefer to work with adults is because they can then make you work harder. Yeah. There's lots more rules when you're a kid, and it's a lot easier to work with adults. And although it was an American film, they were filming it, I feel like it was in Romania or somewhere. Okay. So they wanted European actors to be in it. And in all honesty, I had no idea at the time who Donald Sutherland was. I didn't really know who he was. And my manager, because I still had a manager at the time, not an agent, was like he's massive. And I was like, okay, like I don't know who he is. Like he's just some old man, Donald Sutherland, whatever. And this part was and the girl in it, now she was actually established. She was already a known actor, and they ended up going with somebody known and who was the age in the end. But I auditioned for about 6 months for this film. And I got down, it was me and the girl who got it. It was I was down to the last two for it. And I grafted for this part. I ended up having to go and see, this is how much work, how far down the line. I'd auditioned in front of the money. So I'd auditioned in front of the people, the investors. I had auditioned in front of the director, the producer. The producer came over from America. I had to speak, this is no joke, I had to speak in a posh English accent I was told not to be Geordie in the meeting for the American director. Why? And so he could understand me. Oh, okay. And then, and then they sent me to accent lessons with a woman somewhere in London to learn 1800 Southern American accent. Can't remember how to do it now, but it was an 1800 Southern American at the time. And so I was far down the line for this part. If you're doing that kind of level of stuff, they're considering you seriously for the role. Yeah. And then I didn't get it.
Oh.
And I was heartbroken. I actually think that was my first audition since Byker Grove, because it was just after singing. And I hadn't auditioned for anything when I was at Byker Grove. I was obviously just working all the time, so I didn't need to. And it was just, that one was a hard one, because it was like, first it was the first audition I'd done, and then it was major time. And it just went on for so long.
Yeah, was we sort of thinking, wow, this could be LA, this could be Hollywood after this.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but equally at that time, I was still newly, finished from Sony. Mm-hmm. I still didn't doubt that could happen. Like it wasn't. There was never a doubt in my mind that would be a thing that would happen, and I never doubted that I would be working in the entertainment industry. But yeah, I mean, I look back at it now and I think, wow, God, that would have been a game changer. That would have been something like different for sure. But it didn't happen. Never mind.
But that's the way, life leads us down a certain path, doesn't it? And
yeah, absolutely.
You're doing really well, being an actress, and you then go and meet your future husband, Ross.
Yeah.
Can you remember that? How did that come about? So that,
there's a slightly, well, we met on a job outside of acting. I used to do a lot of promotional work. So promotional modeling, giving freebies. And he was on a job that I was doing. And actually, he was on the job and he was quite new to promotions himself. He had his own business, and he is gardener. Actually, he had a gardener come out on his house, and his gardener was doing the same kind of stuff. And so his gardener had told him about him, and he went to this meeting to be a promotional model. And he said he got to the meeting and he saw all the fit girls that were there. And he sat down at the meeting and he said, I don't care what I have to do, get me in this role. Like, look at all these fit birds here.
Job. Yeah.
He was like, I need to be on this. And so we actually weirdly, we both we were both paid reserves on this job. So we both paid to stay at home, which is obviously you would rather do that than go and do work.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then people cancelled the job. So we got both separately in our own worlds, got the phone call to come in, both moaned about, didn't really want to do it because we wanted to sit at home and eat crisps and watch telly and be paid, obviously. So we both went on, we met, and it was just a very weird, surreal thing. Like, there's lots of reasons why we both shouldn't have been on that job, and then we met, and he reckoned that I chased him, and he'd read The Game. Have you ever heard of the book The Game?
I've heard of it. I've not read it. I've heard of it.
So I'd also read The Game. So I pulled him on it. You've read The Game. You're trying to neg me.
Yeah.
And he was like, who is this chick? How she read The Game? Like, I'm like, look, I've read it. And so what he said he did was neg me. And then your listeners are probably thinking, what on earth? Just go and Google what this means. It's like a backhanded compliment. So basically he was cuddling the other girls on to say goodbye, and he didn't cuddle me. And one of the other girls said, oh, why didn't you give Holly a cuddle? And I was like, please don't cuddle me. Like, I don't even know you. I'm not that tactile. But then we reckon he planted a seed. Why didn't he cuddle me? Like, my ego kicked in. So he reckons I chased him. But we met the next day. I was actually, this sounds terrible now, but I was at the end of a relationship, and I was living in Essex, and he was from Coventry. And I split up with the lad I was with, got on the mega bus, because I didn't drive, got on the mega bus up to Coventry, much to the horror of everybody around me, as you can imagine. Why are you doing what you do, and you're losing your mind? And I just thought, I have to know whether this is important. We just knew it was very weird. And I went to Coventry and I pretty much didn't come back. We were just from the very beginning. There was lots of similarities in our family setup, and even Ross's dad was a Premiership footballer. And so his growing up had been, I guess, not in the spotlight, but similar to mine in that he was quite known, or he would have been known as his dad, Andy Blair. He played for Sheffield Wednesday and Villa. And so people would have known his dad was a footballer. And so there was almost a spotlight on him, and in the same way that I'd had that spotlight being on TV. And there's just a lot of similarities. And so I came to Coventry, and then we had children. We have 2 daughters. Yeah. And that's what brought me to the Midlands, meeting Ross.
So how long after first dating until you got married? What are you saying? It's obviously love at first sight. And we always just knew we would get married. Is that, sounds weird? We never questioned it. And then the way Brooke was born, my oldest,
And we were like, we probably should get married because like it'd be nice to have the same surname. Like that would be like proper and stuff. And not that we're traditional at all, because we weren't. And so neither of us wanted a wedding, like a proper wedding. And we sort of toyed with the idea, like, do you go to Vegas? Did you do the whole like Gretna Green thing? And then we tried thinking of ways that we could somehow include people without everybody getting involved. But then just both of us, like, I don't want a wedding. So instead, what we did is told nobody. And then we pulled a couple of pals that were like, one was a promotional girlfriend of mine and one a photographer friend of mine, who both become really good friends. At the time, they were like newish people we knew. And we just rang them and said, do you want to like be there when we get married? And didn't tell a single person that we knew proper. Ross got married, like Ross had his dad's Sheffield Wednesday, because he's a Sheffield Wednesday fan, football shirt on. I had like a hoodie, Nike high tops. And we just got married. And then afterwards we text people, and then we went for a cup of tea and a scone, and then we just went back to work. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, people think we like went and did stuff. Ross was like, I'll just go back to it. And I was like, yeah, see you later. That was honestly it. We had these like, we went to Argos because my uncle's a jeweler, and I knew he would make a ring for me, so I couldn't tell him. So we went to get rings the day before. Ross got this awful, I mean, he knew he wasn't going to wear a ring because he didn't want to. And he got this awful thing from Argos, like a big lump of metal. I mean, it would be probably better that my dad, as a trained welder, like changed this, made this ring smaller than my uncle, who was a jeweler, because it was just a tank of metal. And so he had that, and we couldn't find one for me because my fingers are so blooming skinny. So we had a kid's ring and a thing from Argos when we got married. I mean, Ross was peeling the Argos sticker off it in the wedding when we were getting married. And we just, that was us. That was how we were. Like, as a couple, we didn't take ourselves seriously, both fiercely independent, but we always said that we were two lone wolves that managed to be okay with being with each other all the time. And we weren't apart, like, and we didn't, and not in some like weird jealous way or anything. We just liked each other's company, and we didn't get bored of each other. And that's, for me, that I guess was the hardest part of Ross's death and the lead up to it, because Ross had brain cancer. Yeah. We lost Ross before we lost Ross because his brain was going before that. And for me, the most difficult thing was, I couldn't never pretend that Ross was, for other people, you can kind of pretend a little bit that people aren't, they're maybe just not around you. But for me, like, Ross was always around me. We spent our days pottering around together, drinking cups of tea and joking. And, we made our work around us. And so for me, immediately after he got, when he was on a downward spiral to dying, there was no pretending. Like, this was like, he just wasn't there. Like, it was very surreal for me that, I was so used to there always being someone by my side to mostly, in all honesty, pull the shocked face at, like, all day, every day. Like, how was that person, like, got dressed this morning? Just those moments where you've got your pal there all the time. And so for me, it was like, ripping the bandage off. Once he died, there was no cushion for me. It was like, this is how life is now. I have to just deal with this.
How much do you miss him, Holly? You must think about him every day then.
Yeah, weirdly, it's weird because it has now been nearly 3 years, which is just ridiculous, because it feels like 2 seconds ago and a million years ago. Because, and I've been saying this recently, I'm a different person to the person that was with Ross. Obviously, the fundamentals of who I am is the same, and my core values and beliefs. But the version of me now is a person who's walked through pain. And so, whatever my future holds, the person that I'm with next, and I'm not scared of that conversation. Ross and I had that conversation. Yeah. We'll be meeting a different version of me in a different stage of my life. And Ross is with me constantly. And I don't mean in a religious sense, because I'm not religious. I don't believe Ross is in heaven. That doesn't work for me. And I have no problem with anybody else wants to believe he is, including my kids, because we don't know the answer. And I could be terribly wrong. But Ross was an atheist as well. Like, he was all about science. And that's just how that works for me. what I'm comforted by is that energy is infinite. So Ross's energy is part of this earth, whatever that means. Maybe it's not in the sense of, you know, his presence or anything like that. And I'm not saying I feel his presence or anything, but he lives on in our children. He lives on in our memories. And Ross and I, although we were together just under 10 years, we had a really full life together. We did a lot of stuff. We talked, we created memories, and we talked about everything. So even now, I mean, yesterday, his cousin, who was really close, more like a brother to him, his cousin had, we've been talking about, God, what would Ross think about what's going on in the world right now? You know, the coronavirus and all this. And I was saying like, oh, like Ross was a helper. Like he was a person who helped, and he would always look out for other people. And he was always making food for people and always making sure everyone was all right, organizing stuff. He was also autistic, Ross. So he was very direct, very black and white. So a very quirky character. He would say exactly what he thought. He offended people constantly and also flattered people constantly as well. But he was very, very honest. And so for me, like, I know what Ross would say in these situations. I know I can say to the girls all the time, you know, I can say your dad, and we do talk about him every day. And I don't mean that in a like we can't move on kind of way. I just mean he's part of our world. I am who I am because of Ross. You know, there's things that I do now in my world that, you know, my daughter, as the fact I'm a mum, there's so much of my life that is because of what Ross taught me. And of course I taught him things as well. And that's what you have when you're in a relationship like that. And I just think that's how our loved ones live on. They live on in their legacy. And Ross said to me, you know, when the year before Ross's death, we knew when he went in for his second brain surgery, we obviously had a conversation. And it's actually probably the only time Ross was ever a bit nervous before the second brain surgery, having gone through it already, obviously knew the process. And he was nervous in that he was worried he would come out disabled or unable to talk or something like that. You know, normal worries that we would have. And when we were talking just before he went in, he just said, you know what, like, I've lived a life that I'm happy with. You know, if this is it for me, and obviously a year after that it was, if this is it, I've done everything that I wanted to do. I've said what I wanted to say. I've never been told what to do by anybody. I've sang from my own hymn sheet, and I'm happy. And all I want, you just said, just when I'm gone, just tell people I was all right. Tell them I was okay. And that's a comfort to me to know that he was cool with things, and he genuinely was. And I guess that's weird for some people. I know some people at their end of life would be really fearful and all of that stuff, but Ross just wasn't that person. He was more considering how everybody else would be, you know, like he didn't want any plaques or memorials or anything like that, because he was like, no, I don't want you to have a place you have to go to. I don't want you to feel indebted that you've got to go and clean a grave or like a tree that you've got to go to. I don't want that. And I said to him, you know, do you want to make videos for for our daughters, or, you know, do you want to? And he was like, no, I don't want to do any of that, because I trust that you will be there for the girls and that you will know what to say. And if I were to write something now, like, I'm talking about something I don't know about. You know, I could be saying to them, you know, like people write things for their wedding day and stuff. And he's like, I don't know, they might be gay, and it might not be like, I might be putting like to your husband, or, you know, he's like, it's not for me to say that. Like, it's not for me to make that decision now. I trust that they will be absolutely fine, because you'll make sure that they are. And he was very considerate like that. He really did think about that. You know, even the year before, he designed some badges. He was a bit of a designer, and he designed some badges for people to have when he died. And I mean, at the time I was like mortified. It's like, Ross, I can't deal with that. Like, that's such a horrible thing to have to think about. And he was like, look, people like badges. It's a nice memorial thing. People will want them. And they did. And, you know, we sold them, and people had them, and people really did like him, and we've still got him. And that was the kind of bloke that he was. And I guess, you know, when anybody dies, it's about, that's how you remember them in their stories. And people have got an abundance of stories about Ross because he was an odd character.
And how did your children deal with the grief?
So again, we were very honest right from the very beginning, and they were very young, obviously. And Brooke was a little bit understood a bit more, Texas less so. When the tumor had grown and he was, just before we went into the hospice, we brought his bed downstairs because he was really unstable and on his feet. And he was doing, when it's brain, they'll just suddenly do weird stuff. He was asking for a bath of gravy or like weird, which as a northerner, I was totally fine with, because I was I'm like, sounds amazing. Yes, please. But he was like, because his brain was going, we had to keep him downstairs. And I remember at the time, Tex would have been, God, Tex was so little. It's so mad to think of it now. So how old was Tex? Tex was like 4, something like that. And so she couldn't vocalize that she was feeling uncomfortable with stuff. And we had told the girls, so Texas was saying, I don't want Dad's bed to be downstairs, is what she was saying. Now, obviously what she meant is, I don't want any of this to be happening, but what she would say is, I just don't want Dad's bed to be downstairs, Mum. And I'd say, okay, I understand. And just before I told the girls that Ross was going to die, which is the worst conversation of my life, I had been contacted by Jeff Brazier, who was Jade Goody's. Yeah. So we had met before, but we didn't know each other. We had met on, was it Channel 4's Rise, some TV show that was on Channel 4 for a while. And so I obviously knew his story, and I knew that he'd become a life coach, and so similar worlds again. And he tweeted me, there was stuff in the press about Ross's death and what was going on and stuff. And he messaged me and said, look, let me give you a call. And he very kindly called me, and I was at the hospital, and it was at a time where everybody around didn't want to tell the girls and was really fiercely trying to protect them from what was happening. And everything in me was screaming, I can't just kick the stool from under them. I can't just I can't do this. They have to know before. And I didn't have the understanding of it. I didn't know anybody that had been through this. And so he rang me and he talked with me, and he just said, look, you're absolutely right. Of course they need to know. They need to say goodbye. They need to say they're sorry for the thing they think they've done, or they need to tell him something. They need to speak to him. And it's not the same as, I guess, with Jade. She was it ovarian cancer she had? So her mind would have been there at the end, whereas with brain, you do lose them before. And even at that stage, Ross wasn't amazing. Like, he wasn't, we had to do it then. So when I told the girls, he was alert enough and his brain was working enough that although he wasn't really connected with what was being said, in fact, at the time, I'd explained to him that they had said he was going to die, and he would forget it straight away, and someone would have to tell him again. It was pretty horrible. Yeah. And he actually thought, when I asked him to explain what he thought was happening, he said, oh yeah, they're trying to euthanize me. They're getting rid of me. And I was like, no, that's not what's happening, Rossi. But he was on the cusp of it not being an okay thing to explain in front, like with the girls. A week later he might have barked when I said it. Like it wouldn't have been appropriate. And thankfully we were able to sit down, the 4 of us, and we had family with us in the hospital as well, when they were all there ready for it. And I explained to the girls what was happening, and I said, look, I don't know when that will be, but Dad's not going to get better now. Dad's going to die. And I was very, very clear with my language with them. And it's the worst, but at every stage I've been completely honest with them. When I was in the hospice, I remember Brooke, my oldest, she rang me, and bear in mind, I was in the hospice a month. So they were not only without Ross, they were without me. And for 2 weeks they were coming in. And then the last 2 weeks I stopped it because he was asleep, and he was just not eating, and it was just not very nice. It's, end of life, although it was peaceful. It's very hard. I mean, just doesn't need to see him like that. They just didn't need to see him. And so I stopped that happening. So at that time, the girls were with my sister, who was amazing, but it wasn't me and it wasn't Ross. And so I remember Brooke rang me and she said, Mum, she said, I really miss you. And I said, I really miss you too. And she said, but I know that when you come home, that means Dad's died, doesn't it? And I was like, oh my, I mean, that conversation you just don't even want to have. Like it's,
No.
and I was like, yes, darling, that does mean that. And so actually when I came home, when Ross had died, again, I spoke to Jeff Brazier very briefly just on WhatsApp, and he said, just make it something not frightening, make it something, if you have to get balloons, if you have to find some way of making this the next day. Like, it sounds weird to say get balloons, but what he was explaining was, you can make this something that isn't terrifying, something somehow is good. Kids are very resilient. And so I went in, and initially they were excited to see me. And then it was that realization, and we sat down and I told them, and we cried. And then we decided we would draw pictures, and Brooke drew, being that little bit older, it was a little bit clearer what she was drawing. She drew all the family, and it certainly was subconscious. It wasn't a conscious thing. She'd drawn Ross just slightly away from everybody else, away from our line of people. And I just thought, God, that's so poignant. But equally, everything that they were drawing was colourful and happy. And it was, they'd accepted it in a way that children can accept it. And at every stage since then, we've had highs and lows with everything, and we will continue to have that. We've had lots of anger, and we've had lots of tears, and at different milestones in their life, there's been, things like the girls learning to ride their bike. That felt like Dad's job. Like, it just did. I don't know why. It's some silly traditional thing. My dad taught me to ride a bike, and it just felt like that. Like, it's so silly, but I think that's when it's quite, it can be upsetting that they'll say things like, was Dad alive then when that happened? And we'll have to say, no, he wasn't. Like, and I'll still say, like, your dad would have loved that. Your dad would have loved this, or he'd have said this, and he'd have done this, and they laugh. And, I tell them all the stories of how, like, cheeky he was and things that he did that was a bit naughty and stuff, and I'll say, oh, Dad would have done this, and they laugh at it, and and it's also so weird how much of him I see in the girls. You forget, how genetically programmed we are. That their mannerisms and stuff are so weird, like but yeah, and it's, kids are very resilient, and we are very open. I'm very open with the girls, and I have said to them, especially in terms of anger, and although at the moment we're doing really well, the girls are particularly good. My oldest can be quite fearful. She's quite, she gets quite worried about things, understandably. If somebody gets ill, it's a very frightening thing for her. If I get a little bit ill, it's a really big deal for her. It really causes anxiety. Right now, with everything that's going on in the world, I've had to be very, very clear with them about things, because that is very triggering for Brooke particularly. People are going to die. Like, that's all she's heard. Yeah. And that's a really frightening thing. I didn't have that blueprint growing up. My mum and dad are still alive. I can't understand that. And they've got this blueprint now where people die, and, they'll leave my grandma, my 80-year-old grandma's house, who she's amazing, my grandma, and Brooke will burst into tears when she leaves, because she knows that all people die, and she's scared. And that's hard as a parent. And children will say the most brutal things, like they don't necessarily see the impact that their words will have. I remember really early on Brooke saying, I've on my wedding ring, I've got 3 diamonds on my ring. And it wasn't actually intentional. It was just, I went, put 3 diamonds in it. It wasn't like I didn't actually think it out. But in retrospect, I used to say, well, that's 1 for you, Brooke, 1 for you, Texas, and 1 for Daddy. And I always said that to them. So when Ross died, Brooke said, Mum, will you have to take that stone out because Dad's dead now? And I was like, oh my God, like that hit. It just like that's ruthless. But kids, they are just very honest. And I always leave the door open for them to be honest. Equally, they'll play up in the same way normal every kid does, and sometimes they'll try the dad card on for, if they think they're going to get into, they'll say, I feel sad about Dad. And sometimes I will call them out on that bullshit and say, that's not what you were feeling sad about. But then equally, sometimes they'll cry, and then it will go to that place, because just like adults, when we feel sad about one thing, suddenly you think about the worst things in your life. And so I just try to keep things open with them, and we talk about self-development. My oldest has had some counselling. My youngest hasn't been there yet, but she might be in the future, and we just stay open with it.
I think it's what you said before, children nowadays are so much more knowledgeable to things like death.
Mm,
Whether that's, it's education thing, it's on the television.
yeah.
And exactly the same what you said before, I've got a little boy, he's 6 years old, and sometimes he'll say, "Oh, my grandma's old. I don't want her to die." And I'm like,
Mm.
I wasn't like that when I was that old.
Yeah, no, I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe kids are very, very. I mean, you have to be so clear with your children, and I've had to be very direct. I mean, I was very direct anyway because of Ross being autistic, so I was always very literal in my words. So I was quite aware of that. But with children, it's very similar. Like, you can't say they've gone to sleep or you've lost them. Like,
Yeah,
I always think it's
they
the
know.
weirdest thing when you say that. Like, because I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm like, we didn't lose him. He's dead. Like, he's not lost. Like, I know that sounds so brutal, like, but that's how me and Ross were with each other. We were very like literal and very honest and very brutal in the way that we talked. And actually children are very literal in that way as well. And I mean, I made the mistake. They wanted to know Ross was cremated. And again, me and Ross had no attachment to things like that. I just don't. And I really, everybody's entitled to their own stuff. And so I've got Ross's ashes, but I don't know what to do with them because Ross wouldn't have wanted me. He actually said, "Chuck them in the bin," is what he said. I remember him saying, "When I'm cremated, just chuck them in the bin. I don't care." And he wasn't bothered. So it's a weird thing, but I've kept them because I don't know whether the girls in the future will want to do something, and that's their prerogative. And they're just in a box. Like it's a weird thing. But I remember not long ago that because I'd tried to explain what that was and what that meant, and I'd really worked on them detaching from a body, because what I was saying to them is, that's a body is just our vehicle that we're in. Our body is just the shell. Who we are is, who we are. It's our brain, our heart, our soul, whatever you want to call it. It's the personality. It's not the stuff on the outside, the body that we're in. That's just a carcass. It's just a thing. Like, that's not who we are. And so I really try to work on them detaching from that. But then they will say, "So Dad was set fire to." And I mean, it's rude. Like, you're trying to not make it sound awful when you're explaining it, but you're like, I was saying, so it's basically, it's his remains, or his, like, it's ashes, it's like dust, like ash. Now, I had an incense stick on about a year after Ross's death, and it was like the ash coming off it. And Texas, my youngest, I went to dust it off onto my hand and put it in the bin, and Texas burst into tears and said, "No, Mum, that's Daddy."
No.
And I was like, oh, I've not explained this correctly. Like, I thought I was being so clear. Yeah. And it's like, you've just got to be so careful with your words, because the way you say something, the way you talk about death, if you're scared to talk about death, and you've got someone dying in your family, you've got children around, you need to get over it. Like, you've got to show up for them. Even if inside you are like, "Oh my God, holy shit, they just asked me this and I do not know how to answer it." You've got to show up for them, and you've got to be there. I didn't want to have any of the conversations I've had to have. Some of them made me feel physically sick, and yet I've had to have them because they need me to have those conversations. And I'm the same across the board, not just with death, with everything. There was no conversation. I mean, my oldest one came in the other day and said, "Mom, what's a MILF?" I was like, oh. I cracked up. I was like, "Oh." The worst thing is, I said, "I've told you this before." But I don't, I mean, some people might think, well, that's not an appropriate, but do you know what? I explain things in a way that's suitable at the time, and then it will pave the way for later conversations, and they will know that I will never shame them. I will never embarrass them. I will embarrass them, but in other ways. I will never make them feel small because of a thing they want to ask me, because I don't want to do that. I don't care. I just want them to be happy when they grow up, and whoever that is for them.
And at that age, they ask some deep questions, don't they? I say, my son the other day, he rang me up and he went, "Daddy, what's space?" I'm like, that's an heavy question, mate.
I remember mine saying that, and it's usually at bedtime they get all the questions, right? They want to stay up, so they're like, I remember Brooke would ask me a lot of questions, and then I came in again. I was like, "What now?" And she went, "Mom, everything. How does it work?" I was like, "Go to sleep." just go to sleep. No. I mean, they try it on, don't they, when they do? But yeah. And as right now, I mean, I'm now homeschooling. Yes, so that's new. This is a new thing. And now our children know that we're not that smart and we don't know the stuff that they think we know. So I'm like, I don't what fractions?
Forget it.
Just forget. I mean, that's not how my brain works. That's why I used to pay a maths tutor for you, because I don't know. That's why I pay an accountant. I've got this far and I've been all right. So yeah, so it's a constant learning when it's with kids, isn't it? And when you've got bigger stuff, big deep stuff going on, and it becomes challenging. But you know, like anything, I am a believer in looking the tiger in the eye.
Yeah.
Dealing with life head on. And and I don't mean that in a stoic way. I don't mean like I don't cry and I don't feel frustrated, all the normal human emotions. I do. And I've, you know, because I can talk about stuff, I think sometimes people can confuse that for lack of feeling, or, you know, that maybe I am faking it in the way that I live my life, which is absolutely not true. I will not put a camera on myself when I'm sitting crying. I think I've cried on camera once and it's went out, and that was just after Ross died. And because there was just no other way of doing that. But equally, I don't think people need to see me in my darkest times. And when just because I can talk about Ross's death and just because I can talk openly doesn't mean that I don't feel it. I don't feel it when I'm saying it right now. I feel it in the moments that it's sad. I feel it in that moment when I find his handwriting on something, or I go to a place that I haven't been to since Ross's death. Yeah, you know, we went to Lanzarote just before it's all kicked off in the coronavirus stuff. We went to Lanzarote in the kids' last break. And we had been there with Ross. We went to this hotel. We'd cancelled it 2 years running, and it became like this bad omen hotel. We ended up going, and it was amazing. But the first time we went, I had really difficult pregnancies, and I was told I couldn't fly when I was pregnant with Texas. The second time, Ross got brain cancer, so we cancelled him. We ended up going to this hotel, and it was amazing. When we went to Lanzarote recently, we drove past it and it ended up being just down the road from where we actually were staying. So it was a really weird thing that I was like, this is like it feels like 2 seconds ago we were there, and yet it feels a million miles away. And so they're the moments that I'll cry. They're the moments that I'll feel sad. You know, I actually had a bit of a cry today. I don't really know what it was about. I think it was I know what it was about. I was trying to think. Something came up on my, I think it was a news feed thing. I was looking something, and it was an old article about Ross's death came up on something. And it just upset me for a moment, because it just felt like, especially I guess with everything that's going on in the world, you know, isolating and all that stuff. And it was just that feeling of, it's been a long time since you were here. And I kind of, you know, you'd be the person that I would talk to about this now, and that would walk through this with me. And I think they're the moments that you feel sad. And, you know, certainly on my YouTube and things like that, there've been comments that maybe I didn't love Ross because I can talk about it. Obviously from arseholes, like not from like nice, reasonable human beings. But I actually, when I guess the first year after Ross's death, when I started to be a bit more out of the adrenaline phase of grief, and I was a bit more awake to this is life and Ross isn't here, I started to get a little bit affected by people's judgment, and it was very unlike me. It's really unlike me to be affected by that. And I started to think, like, should I be having a breakdown? Do I need to be having, I mean, I'm perfectly entitled to, am I coping? And I actually went to see a counsellor purely because I felt all right. And the counsellor I saw her for 6 sessions, because I may as well have, because I had health insurance and I may as well use it. And I saw her, and she was just like, you don't need to see me. You're dealing with everything appropriately. You're crying when you need to cry, and you're fine when you're not. And I've never seen anybody dealing with it in a more appropriate way. Just stop concerning yourself with other people thinking you're going to have a breakdown, and doing the head tilt thing where they're like, but are you okay in yourself? Are you really okay? Yeah, you know, people will say it to like, people will say it to like friends of mine or family, but how is Holly really? I mean, that's obviously an act, right? I'm like, it's not a fucking act. That's just how I feel. Like, it's just not, like, life is not like that for me. Like, we live and we die, and I'm comfortable with death. I'm comfortable with my own death. I'm not going to be here forever, you know? And I think we're also fearful of that. And, you know, I guess for me, like, I've lost somebody incredible, and Ross dying, it still shocks me. I still even saying it, it's like, what did that happen? Like, how did that happen? Like, but having that happen, it just forces you into like, this is life. This is not a dress rehearsal. Like, this is now. Like, if you want to do something, you've got to do it, because you might not get a second chance. So tell that person you love them, you know, try that job, try that business, let people think you're crazy, because so what? You don't have to be bothered by other people's opinions, because what they think of you is none of your business.
Exactly. You know, as you said, you have those private moments of grief, and because you come across positive on your YouTube all the time, it doesn't mean that you fucking hurt deep inside, you know?
God, no, exactly. I mean, and again, on the flip side, it's not all the time either. So I'm not like sat on my own crying. Maybe there's the impression for some people that they think I'm sat on my own crying. I'm actually very comfortable, first of all, with my own company. I've never, like, jokes aside about being a lone wolf, me and Ross were very independent people. Like, we were very, and also I also knew when Ross was diagnosed that I might not have him forever. Like, I wasn't jaded in that. He had grade 4 brain cancer, rare brain cancer. Yeah. There was no, like, he would actively say, this will kill me one day. He was still trying to beat it, obviously, but he was like, look, it might not be now. It might be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but it'll kill me. Like, I ain't living through this. That's not reality. And, you know, although he was very positive. And so, you know, for me, like, I'm happy a lot of the time. Like, I'm comfortable with my own company. And I guess also I've met a lot of people at my workshops, and people who speak to me or message me. I get a lot of messages off people in similar situations, and they'll often feel guilty about moving forward in their lives in any aspect. And I've not felt that. I've not felt guilt, because I know that Ross trusted my judgment on stuff. And although, like, there'll be still times, you know, people like to say things like, he's watching over you. I mean, and I'm like, that's weird. And I hope not. Like, that's really weird. Like, that doesn't give me any comfort, because all he'll be saying is, why are you loading the dishwasher like that? And why have you done this? And I mean, like, you just be telling me off for things that I've been doing, you know? So I'm not comforted by that fact, but you know, it's, yeah, I guess, you know, grief. And this is why I've always talked about it. This is why I talked about it in hospice. It's why I talked about it afterwards. Grief is a really uncomfortable area for people. And my favorite topics are the areas that make everybody feel uncomfortable: sex and gender and politics and religion. And they're my favorites, because that's actually what's interesting about life, all our opinions on those areas. And things like grief and sex and religion and politics are things that connect us all in some way. And I think we shouldn't be scared of those conversations, because when we have them openly, it allows other people to feel less alone. The reason I talk about grief sometimes, and the reason I talk about the stuff I do, is because I don't want people to feel alone. I want them to know that it's okay to be angry at their person for dying. You know what I mean? Like, that's a weird space for people to not you know, sometimes you can be really pissed off for them for getting brain cancer and dying. Like, how dare they? That wasn't how, like, I didn't ask to be a single parent, you know? And that's been thrust upon me. And, you know, those kind of things, like, people don't want to talk about it because they think that makes them somehow, you know, less loyal to their person. And it's just not true.
No, I think it's incredible, you know, being open and honest about it. And so, you know, is that what spurred you on to set up the Happy Me project?
Yeah, so the Happy Me project came about after Ross's death, and there was it was quite high profile at the time, and it was in every major newspaper, and there was a lot of, you know, my social media was inundated with people going, how the fuck are you coping with that, while I can't deal with the fact that my ironing's up the wall, or my kids are being arseholes. Like, I can't cope with that, and yet you're coping with something that terrifies me. And so many people were messaging me, and I genuinely give a shit about people. Like, I don't even know why, but I do. I care that people, and I think it's because I understand that life is short, and because I really appreciate, like, having a life where I live freely. Because I have a very free life in that I get up in the morning, I do largely what I want. I'm not talking complete financial freedom, but I certainly wake up and do what I want, and I wear what I want, and nobody tells me what to do. And I appreciate how fucking grateful I am for that fact. And I want other people to have that, and whatever that means to them, I want them to feel happy and loved and connected. And that really matters to me. So when people message me and they say, I want to give up, I can't cope, I'm not happy, like, that matters to me. And so when when Ross died, I couldn't answer all those people, and I wasn't in the headspace to either. But I'm also, I'm a person who's a problem solver, and I try to, and also entrepreneurial, as I've said. And so I put together the first thing was the online course, the Happy Me Project 1, a 21-day online self-development course, the fundamentals of self-development. So what I was doing every day to not lose my head, the stuff that I talk about, the stuff that I do to keep myself feeling good. And I thought, right, I'll just put this together. I had zero expectation of what it would do. And I just pushed it out into the world. And I've now seen hundreds and hundreds of people across the world do that course. And I guess I was surprised, and I wasn't, because I just didn't have any expectation of it. And I knew I knew that I could put it out. I knew what I was talking about. I'm good at what I do. And I'm comfortable with saying that. I have done this myself since I was really young. I've organically developed what I do, and then I learned it in terms of, doing courses and things like that. But I knew it from a heart space, from a place of needing it, from a place of actually needing that what I teach. And so when I put it out, I knew that I could just go, look, it's 30 quid. It's not a high end course. Yeah. I put it out there to go, there you go. Then I can pass that to someone, go, look, if you do that, that's what I'm doing. And then at the end of that year, I was kind of ready to people a bit, and I started to do the workshops. So I've done, I think, 16 workshops now to date, and they've been sellout workshops around the country. In February this year, launched the Happy Me Project, does confidence and self-belief. And hopefully next week, I will be dropping the Happy Me Project, does resilience. Now, resilience wasn't on my... It was on my mind for the end of this year. So I had it written down, but it wasn't going to happen. Actually, this year was largely going to be about confidence, body confidence, confidence in speaking. I've got workshops ready to go. That was my next online course to drop. And then the coronavirus has hit. And what I realize is that what people need now are the tools and the skills to get them through something really difficult. And resilience is something that I have in abundance, and something that I really know. And so I will be launching that course. Again, it's only a £30 course. It's low end, but it's going to be all of the stuff that I do. My tagline is that self-development doesn't have to be fancy, right? It doesn't have to be some woo-woo bollocks where you sage your room.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you then, Holly.
Don't worry, no worries. I don't know what I was kind of saying, so I was probably talking about the Happy Me Project. So yeah, so I launched the workshops, 16 sellout workshops. Amazing. Then in February this year, dropped the Happy Me Project 2, which is confidence and self-belief. And then hopefully next week, I'll be dropping the Happy Me Project 3, which is all about resilience. So at this time, we all need resilience. And I was actually going to launch this at the end of the year. But with everything that's going on, people need resilience. And I have that in abundance. So I will be launching that. Again, it's going to be a £30 course. I want it to be able to be accessible for people. But equally, I should be paid for the work that I do, because that is my job. That is my work, So, but I always try to keep because I know it's not cheap to work with me one-on-one. If people work with me as a coach one-on-one, that's the most expensive option, I guess. Then there's also the options to do online courses, and I've kept them as low as I can, £30 to £60 for any of the courses. And actually there's a kids course as well, which is £20, and that's a visualization course for young kids. So there's that as well, but I've kept them like that. And then if people still can't afford that, or they don't want to, they've got my YouTube channel, my Instagram, my Facebook, and they can get lots of freebies on those things. So I try and keep them something there for everybody. But the Happy Me Project is just all about self-development. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't need to be this big deal. It doesn't have to be you chanting over crystals and saging your room, because Dave the bricklayer, he don't get that. You know what I mean? Dave don't get that. Dave wants to know, all right, babe, how am I going to like feel happy more than I feel shit? And that's what I want to teach him. So, you know, that's my thoughts. I don't want to make things, I want to make it accessible. You know, the people that need it most aren't going to pay £1,000 to go on some hippie retreat. As much as that to me sounds brilliant, and I would love all that hippie woo-woo stuff as well, that's not going to be accessible for the majority of people that need resilience right now. And they need to know it's coming from somebody who understands it. And that's often why I talk about my own story, because I don't want people thinking I'm coming at this from some kind of, you know, ivory tower, some kind of privileged place where nothing's happened to me, because shit's gone down in my life as well. And I'm there with everyone in the trenches. Like, I'm there. So I can talk to you about this stuff, and I can be real with you, and I can swear a bit too much. I can tell you to change your bullshit story, and I can tell you to toughen up at times in the most loving way, whilst also cheerleading you on. And really that's what my brand's about.
Yeah, it's you know, it's been, as you say, it's being honest. You know, you're not somebody out there who's just gone and got a qualification. You've actually lived that life. You talk about resilience and what you've been through. So are you going corporate with this, or is this individuals who?
No, this is individual. These courses are for just the normal men and women, you know, man and woman on the street. These are for everybody, and people can access these through my website or through my you know, through Facebook and Instagram and all of those places. There'll be links on all of those. Or you can just type in the Happy Me Project. Or if you type in Holly Matthews into Google and you can't find anything, then your internet's broke and you need to phone somebody, because I'm on there. I'm definitely on there.
I'll put the links on the YouTube and things like that out there. So you talk about vlogging, and you know, you're brilliant at it. I've watched loads of your videos on there. And you post one this week about the coronavirus, so we might as well talk about it.
Let's dive in.
It's just fucking mad. It's
mental.
I don't know what your viewpoint on it is, but for myself personally, some people in this country, whether it's the British mentality, have just not been taking it serious enough.
No, I think that's it. And I guess none of us really would took it seriously if, you know, a month or so back. And I don't think I wasn't taking it seriously in that I understood people had died of it. I knew it was serious, but I just didn't think it would get this bad. I don't think any of us did. No. Now, my dad works in health and safety in Oman in the desert, and he is the Grim Reaper. I mean, he is literally telling me death counts now in the family Facebook WhatsApp, family WhatsApp group, not Facebook. He's terrible. Like, he's drained the life out of me this week with his like negativity. But equally, because of him, I think I was probably a little bit more serious about it than people around me. So like, even when we went to Lanzarote, we actually had masks, and my dad was like, you've got to wear masks through the airport, like, you've got to. And I was like, I felt like a knob, like, to be honest, but I was listening to what he was saying, and he was like, you need to take this seriously, like, this is going to get really bad before it gets better. And so I've said to the girls, and I did a video on my YouTube about talking to my daughters about it as well. I just said to them, look, there's going to be people that are going to freak out, and they're going to panic, and they're going to, you know, they're going to become very isolated in their thinking, and very like us and them, and they'll hold toilet paper and they won't share and all of that stuff. There's going to be those people. And you know what? I'm not even judging them, right? Everyone's doing their own thing, and everyone's trying their best. And and I'm a big believer in everybody's doing the best that they can, right? And when you have that mindset, every time someone pisses you off, if you think to yourself, that person is doing the best that they can. Now, that doesn't mean that they show up in a way that's suitable for us. That doesn't mean that we agree with them, but it means that we understand from a human perspective that person's got their own triggers, their own fears, and that person needs toilet roll, right? And if they need it and it makes them feel better, then okay. I might say, you know, chill the fuck out, but whatever, that's what's happening. On the other end of the scale, you've got dickheads that are still sat in a pub. Now, I'm calling them dickheads because it does not, in my opinion, it's not the smart thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we've got to, and what I said to my girls is, look, this ain't about me and you, because the truth is we'd probably be all right. In reality, you and I, you know, unless I've got anything underlying I don't know about, I'd be all right. And so would you. But it's not about me. It's about me lacking that selfishness. You know, my sister's partner's had leukemia a second time, and he's only a year after transplant. He's really high risk. They're on full lockdown now. I'm thinking about people like him. I'm thinking about, if my husband, and the girls have asked me this, if Ross was here, like if dad was here, would he be high risk? I'm like, you'd have been really high risk. Like, yeah. And there's millions and millions of people up and down this country that are that high risk. And it's for them that we should be being careful. Yeah. And you know what? I've talked about this a lot this week, and I'm going to be doing a boot camp in my Facebook group this Sunday. And the boot camp is called, I can't remember what I called it now, something like "We Can Fucking Do This" or something like that. Yeah. Very base in my titling. But we can do this, and I'm going to be doing some lives in there on fear and being ruthless with what you allow into your world, and we're going to do a guided meditation as well. And so I think it's really important that we first of all focus in on the good things that will come because of this. And one of the things that comes from adversity is that you cut the shit. Yeah, you cut the bullshit in your life. You cut the people you don't need to see that don't really matter. Yeah. You cut you stop worrying about stuff. Like I was actually going to be doing it, like I was saying about the Happy Me project. I was going to do a body confidence online course, because it's coming up to that time of year where people are starting to think of bikini bodies and all that. I don't think anyone gives a shit about their bikini body right now. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly you cut the shit. Suddenly nobody cares about their stretch marks anymore. So suddenly nobody's thinking about that. Suddenly the footballs become less important. That's not there for us. So, nothing seems that important. And I think that's a good thing. The fact that we are all considering our wastefulness, the fact we're considering what we're eating, we're considering how much toilet roll we're using or whatever else. The fact that we went out today, so my daughters we're not self-isolating because nobody's ill, but we haven't been out the house very much, so we're just social distancing, so we've just avoided people. And so we went to the park today. We went out on the bikes and stuff. And I just said to the girls, look, we're going to keep away from people. If it's too busy, we'll come home. Because I'm not trying to spread anything. And we don't know who's got what, and we don't, right? So I'm very conscious of that. But we went out today, and there was so many people about, by the way, that were just like, in the pub, which just shocks me. Yeah. But again, it's that, like you say, it's that sort of British mentality, and for lots of reasons that's great, in that we just keep going and keep carrying on. But equally, in this instance, that isn't the smart move, people. It's just not. No, and that's what Boris Johnson's. But we've been going out, and as I already said, I didn't listen to his stuff today. I'm kind of, I've got to be honest, I've turned it off now. Yeah. I had a mild. I think everyone has their moments of freak out, and mine was about 3 days ago, where I went, oh my God, like, whoa, they just felt a bit overwhelmed. I'm an empath, so I really feel like, I don't know how to explain it without sounding very woo-woo, but I'm a person that really feels energy. Like I'm very intuitive with people. And so when there's a collective grief or a collective worry, I feel it a lot. So I have to be very protective of my mind. And I felt it so much this week. I felt really heavy. Everyone's really worried. Everyone's very negative. And I got sucked into doing stuff I don't do, like watching the news, which I just don't do normally because I don't need, I just don't need it. Like, and I've watched so much. And so it actually overwhelmed me with all the sadness that I was seeing, and the worry and the fear and all of that. And I had my like freak out. And then I did meditate, and I sat with myself, and I gave myself a talking to, and I decided that what I was going to do in this time was exactly what I did when Ross was dying, and that I was going to create, not consume. So I was going to create something to solve a problem. I was going to focus on that, not consuming shite that I don't need to see or whatever. So I've actually not seen, I know I will hear what's happening because somebody will still tell me. Yeah. So I've just decided I'm going to go back into my bubble, and somebody will tell me what I need to do. But quite honestly, we're in the house. I've got food in the fridge. I've got toilet roll. Don't come for me.
I've got 17 rolls. So.
Yeah, we've got toilet roll. I've got so much cheese. I don't know how it's happened, because I bought a couple of cheeses the other day thinking, I like cheese, and I want to be, if I'm self-isolating, I want to be in with the cheese and some crackers, right? And but then I didn't anticipate that my food shop would come, and then more cheese came. Yeah. I've got a lot. I have some properties, and I've got a tenant. who called me this week to say she's, you know, a little bit concerned about how she'll pay the rent and stuff. So we've talked, and I said, look, you're safe, you're cool. It's going to be all right. We'll work it out, whatever happens, and you're cool. But she said she's got no cheese, and she's a vegetarian. She loves cheese. She does not vegan, so she has cheese. So I'm actually going to drive out and put some cheese on my tenant's doorstep. Is that weird? That might be a bit weird. I don't know. I should probably get some. I mean, I've got lots of cheese, so I feel like if she needs cheese, I should share the cheese.
It's
so
community spirit, Holly. Yeah,
just giving out like the cheese Santa or something.
Exactly. Well, I think it's what you were saying today about, you know, going to the park, this social distancing, and it's just being sensible.
It's just being sensible, yeah. Let's not spread disease that we don't even necessarily know whether we've got.
It's against what you mentioned on before, you know, with myself as well. No underlying conditions doesn't put me at risk, but I could be a carrier of it. I could get it. I could be.
Yeah, we don't know, do we? And they've even said, haven't they? Like they've even said that some of us may not even show any symptoms of it. So we just don't know, and I just don't understand why people are. Like, I mean, I've not seen so many conspiracy theories in a long time. I mean, there is some people.
What's your favorite?
What did I hear this week? Oh, this is my favorite. Somebody who was on my Facebook thought that because it's called COVID-19, that it's. She said, well, I don't know what they're making a big deal about it for, because they've already had 19 versions of it. No, babe. No, baby. No, it started in 2019. Yeah. No. And then somebody pulled her on that and said that's what it meant. And she responded, I don't believe it. Like, she just doesn't believe it. So you can't argue with people that will just argue black is white and they won't believe facts. It's hard. I mean, I've enjoyed, the one thing I've really loved, and this is absolutely British, the most British thing, is the humour that's come out of it.
Yes,
I mean,
I agree.
That has been my favourite thing, and I really think we should focus on the laughter. And my sister yesterday had me cracking up because she said she's got too much food in. She's properly isolated now because her partner's, as I say, like he's not long had transplant. So they're in, and she's in a flat in London with 2 kids. I mean, she's been cracking me up with her updates of like the kids playing the guitar loudly, just like day 4 of quarantine. It's like awful. Yeah. But she said to me, I saw a meme that said, I'll either lose 30 pounds during this quarantine or I'll gain 30 pounds. So I sent it to my sister and she was like, well, I know what fucking I'll be gaining 30 pounds. There's so much food in here. I've not moved it.
I've just ate this week.
That's what she said. She's like, I'm so full.
Yeah.
And then she went, but you know, she's like, next year I'll be saying to people, oh, sorry, I'm carrying a little bit of pandemic weight.
That's her excuse, isn't it? Exactly.
Yeah, she's like, babe, I'm carrying a bit, I'm just a bit of pandemic weight, hun. That's all it is. So I was cracking up yesterday, pandemic weight. I was saying to a couple of my friends are PTs, and are doing a lot of online stuff, you know, for kids as well, being off school. I was like, please, there's got to be a hashtag pandemic weight, because that is funny.
Yeah, I think, is it Joe Wicks? He's going to be on telly next week doing the kids' exercises every day. So,
yeah. My sister said he's been doing some online, so she's been doing some with it because they've been off a little bit before, so they've been doing some of it. Said it was really good.
Yeah, I think I'll give that a miss, to be fair.
Just sitting in cheese.
Just sitting. Yeah, come bring me a cheese around.
Yeah.
Holly, it's been brilliant. Honestly, I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. Couple more questions, final questions for you. So, a couple of fun questions. Little Miss Perfect. Okay,
yes.
So you're single. Like, you appeared on Top of the Pops.
I did, yes.
Okay, fill in the blanks. Going to put you on the spot.
Oh God, go on then.
If I seem bittersweet, I don't mean to be. But there in me wants to break all your rules.
Oh my God, I've forgotten. Hang on. If I seem bittersweet, I don't mean to be. Oh my God. I don't mean to.
I've thrown this one on you. I apologise.
Oh God, that's bad. But the devil in me wants to break all the rules. Yeah. I can't remember that word. What was it before that? I can't remember it. Tell me.
Cruel.
Cruel, of course. I don't mean to be cruel. Sorry. Yeah.
And finally, you know, we've touched on your acting, you know, being a brilliant actress, and you always go into that movie with Donald Sutherland in. And if you look back of your life, and they could make your life as a movie, you never know. One day it might happen. Mm-hmm. Who would you have playing you, and why?
Oh, I didn't hear that last question there, Adam.
Yes.
Just lost.
No, so yeah, if looking back on your life, and you've had, you know, a hell of a life that we've gone through tonight, from being a successful actress through, you know, to now being a brilliant entrepreneur with your business. If somebody approached you saying, we're going to make, you know, your life into a movie, who would you have playing you and why?
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't know. I probably don't even know who anyone is. I mean, I'm so rubbish with like celebrities. I don't know. I have lots of lookalikes, but my lookalike, like these are lookalikes that other people have told me. So my lookalikes are Jessie J.
Okay.
I get.
Yeah, I get that.
I can see it a little bit. I sort of see it. I've forgotten her name now. Who used to play Wednesday Addams? Christina Ricci. I used to get her. Yeah, she'd be a good shout. I mean, yeah, she's got the same big forehead as me and little chin. We've got that sort of manga look about us. And I also this is what Ross used to tell me I look like. Robbie Williams.
That's did you say it as a compliment?
He's a very handsome man. I take it as a compliment. And actually, a friend of mine, Brian, who runs the True Geordie podcast, he had Robbie Williams on, and I messaged him saying, "Can you ask Robbie Williams whether Robbie Williams thinks that he looks like me, or I look like him?" But I don't think he did.
That's amazing, Holly. It's been an absolute honour to have you on. You know,
thank you.
Inspiration to all people out there who've come over grief, and you know, you're brilliant business-minded single parents, and I'm sure you know, Ross is, as you touched on before, he's leading you, and you know, your children are always being their memories moving forward. So thank you so much for coming on Behind the Life. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Holly. Take care. Take care. Bye. And that was another episode of Behind the Life podcast with myself, Adam Lambert. Please give me a follow on Instagram at Behind the Life podcast, Facebook Behind the Life podcast, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button below as well as the like button. I'll be back soon for another episode. For now, take care.